everybody, Mr. Klein here, and welcome to the Alpha Den. For those of you who aren't familiar with the channel, the Alpha Den is a channel that is both for teachers and students. You'll sometimes see videos that are made specifically for students that teachers can use in their classroom for like character education and stuff. And then there are also there are also videos like this one that are made specifically for educators. And so this title of this video, I'm kind of calling Classroom Management 101. I've been teaching for a little over 20 years now, and I'm by no means an expert in classroom management, but it is one of the things that I have focused on the most in my career, and hopefully I've picked up a thing or two along the way that I can share and that someone out there might find beneficial. So I'm going to go over the top 5 things that I can think of right now in my career that I think if you implement them into your classroom can help either a new teacher be more successful or even a seasoned teacher maybe improve some things that they might be struggling with. So again, I'm going to have top 5 classroom management tips and tricks, whatever you want to call them. I'll save the one that I think is the most important for last, and we'll just kind of get right into it. So tip number 5, don't assume they know. A lot of times we just assume that kids, they know how to be respectful, they know how to raise their hand, they know how to be responsible. If you were teaching 5th grade, you would think by now, through kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, they would have picked up on how to get along with each other and raise their hand and be patient, but they haven't. And it is up to you to not only teach math and writing and reading and science and social studies, but you also need to teach them how to be successful in your classroom. You also need to teach those behavior skills as well. I think a lot of times we assume that they know how to do it, but they really don't. And if we don't teach them that, then it can lead to struggles in your classroom, especially if you're a new teacher. And we know that every classroom is different. You may have a class one year that didn't need a whole lot of behavior maintenance. They kind of did their thing. But then the very next year, you may have a classroom that is just totally different. And so they're going to need a lot more behavior maintenance. And so just when I say don't assume, I mean put in the work that you need to do daily to make sure that these guys know how to be successful in your classroom. And a lot of times, instead of me saying to let them know how to behave, I'll say to let them know how to be successful in your classroom, because that's really what it comes down to. We want these students to be successful each and every day. And part of them being successful is to know how to do that in your classroom. Because let's face it, every teacher has different expectations. And that can be tricky for kids. And the expectations are different than what they will have at home. You know, at home they may be very, very independent. And then when they come to school, they're not allowed to be as independent. So it's very important that we let them know what they need to do to be successful. All right, tip number 4. Tip number 4, have options. What do I mean by have options? Well, a lot of teachers have a behavior management system that they use. And you can have any behavior management system. A lot of people will ask me, what should I use? You can use whatever you want. It really comes down to how you sell it, how you present it to your kids. You have to buy into that classroom management system, and they have to buy into that classroom management system. And it takes work. You have to pretty much be a sales person, and you have to sell them on that system. But what I mean by have options is there will be days when that classroom management system, for whatever reason, it was a full moon, there was something in the breakfast, it just isn't working. So you need to have options. You need to have backup plans to help you get through the day. And that can be as simple as old school method like passing out raffle tickets. Like you might just notice that the day before they really, really struggled and they just were chatterboxes all day long. And so maybe you pass out tickets to those kids who are being nice and quiet that day. And maybe they weren't raising their hands yesterday. They were just blurting out. So maybe you pass out tickets to the students who are raising their hands and being patient and calm. However you want to do it. But tickets is a way. You could do a marble jar for the whole classroom. If the class needs to work on something that it's not just 2 or 3 kids that are struggling with it. It's like a majority of the room. Maybe you give them a marble for every time they meet a goal. And then hopefully if they have like 7 or 8 marbles by the end of the day, maybe there's some type of reward that they can earn. There's lots of different things. You can do big kerplunk towers or small kerplunk towers. There's words you can spell on the board. There's things you can do with stopwatches. There's lots of different things. And if you have some ideas, you can always drop a comment down below, and so that we can see it and comment on it, or someone could pick up on it and maybe it's something they can use as well. So that's tip number 4, is to have options. Have as many backup options as you can have for those days when things just aren't going the way. Tip number 3, don't take your foot off the gas. What I mean by don't take your foot off the gas is if on Monday you tell your students what they need to do to be successful for the week, that's not going to be enough. They may take it in on Monday, hopefully, but they're going to need to hear it again on Tuesday. And then they're going to need to hear it again on Wednesday and on Thursday and also on Friday. You can't just teach it once and assume that that's going to be enough. If you truly want to have students who are constantly trying to do their best and in some ways like policing each other, like trying to make sure that they're holding each other accountable and stuff, you really have to build that environment. You have to build that culture in your room. And you can't just talk about it once on Monday and then not talk about it again until the very next Monday. So, and that also goes for not just weekly, but monthly. Like if you work really hard, most teachers, I think at the beginning of the year, really hit those behaviors hard. But you want to hit those behaviors hard in August and in September and in October and November and December and so on and so on and so on. I always feel like the teachers with the strongest classroom management are the teachers who are working as hard in December as they were in August with classroom management. And one thing I've noticed about those teachers as well is they are not as near stressed out in December as a lot of their other colleagues are, because they've been consistently building that culture of behavior expectations in their room monthly. So do not take your foot off the gas. That's really one of the best things I can tell you, is don't take your foot off the gas. Be consistent and don't skip it. Don't skip it. If every morning at 8 o'clock you go over expectations for the day, don't skip it. Hit it Monday, Tuesday, all throughout the week. And there will be some days where you need to hit it again and maybe at 12 o'clock. Some days the kids just need to hear it twice. So don't take your foot off the gas. Tip number 2. Don't give up your power. So what I mean by don't give up your power, and we all know teachers are superheroes, so they have superpowers, right? What I mean by that is you are the most effective person in that building for that student who is in your room. At least that's the way you want it to be. That's the way you want it to be. You want to do everything you can to build the relationship with that student who's in your room. You don't want to take that power that you have, that opportunity, I should say, that you have with that student and pass it on to someone else. If there's a student you're struggling with and you've been trying and it just isn't going well, but you think that the person next door who's really good at classroom management might be able to get them to listen and behave better, then you just gave some of your power away. And once you give it away, it's near impossible to get it back. So I've always felt like, for me personally, I very rarely ever will call the office. Now, there are sometimes you have to call for an administrator. You just have to. But it needs to be a last resort, because when you do, you're giving away some of that power to that administrator that's going to come down and take care of that behavior problem. And like I said, I know there's times you have to. Your job is to keep those students safe. And there might be a time where you feel like it's not going that way and you have to make that decision. But I'm talking about like the little things, like not doing their work, or not focusing, playing around, different things like that. The stronger our relationship with that student, the more likely we're going to be able to be the one to actually be able to step in and make the adjustment that's going to be necessary for that student to be successful that day. So don't give your power away. I've seen so many teachers in the past, they give away their power and they never get it back. I feel like the first time you give it away, it's just like you just can't give it back. So do everything you can to build that relationship, keep your power with that student, and make sure that you are the most effective person with that student in that building. All right, and now for tip number 1. All right, tip number 1. This is the number 1 thing that I think that if you do, this is the biggest recommendation that I personally, from my experience, can give. But the number 1 thing I can tell you to do to improve your classroom management is to be yourself. If you are a new teacher watching this video, or you are a student teacher who hopes to someday have their classroom, biggest thing I can tell you to do is to be yourself. It is so important. And I learned that when I was student teaching. When I was student teaching, my supervising teachers would say, you need to find your teacher voice. You need to find your teacher voice. And it honestly made me think whether I was cut out for this or not, because when they said, find your teacher voice, they needed me to yell at the kids. They needed me to raise my voice. And my personality is a quiet, calm demeanor. And for me to raise my voice is for me to be someone that I'm not. And if you're an educator, I hope you're in it with the goal of being a career-long educator. And that's something you can't do if you're pretending. You can't go 30 plus years if you're constantly pretending to be someone who you're not. So I had to quickly figure out, okay, what do I need to do so that I can be myself, so that I don't have to raise my voice? And so I focused a lot on classroom management, especially in my first few years teaching. And it's something that I've continued to do because I've constantly wanted to get better at that, so that I can be that calm, cool, quiet demeanor in my classroom. So I created classroom management systems that worked well for me. The school I teach at is an environmental school, so I chose basically a wolf pack, and the dynamics of a wolf pack with the rankings of the wolves, with the alpha, the omega, and the beta wolves. And I turned that into a classroom management system where my kids are able to earn levels throughout the day. You know, if they're showing those leadership levels and they go home as alpha, and there's rewards for going home on alpha each and every day. And then we talk about how to be successful and how to get to alpha every day. And, you know, and that's worked really well for me. And when I first started teaching, it didn't look like that. But I've kind of fine-tuned it throughout the years. And again, you do not have to use something like that. You can use anything. It's all about how you sell it. But instill things in your classroom that allow you to be you. And another tip that I would give is, it kind of goes back to some of the earlier tips I talked about, is just make sure that each and every day you're telling those kids how to be successful, so that you can be you. You can be you, and that you can go home at the end of the day. I mean, you'll go home tired, and we all know that as educators, you go home tired. But when you wake up in the morning, you want to be mentally, ready to go back to school, because it's a place that you enjoy being, where you are allowed to be you, where you're allowed to spend time with students who you care about and you truly want to genuinely see succeed. So yeah, number 1 tip I can give you is to be yourself. Every student teacher I've ever had, that's one of the things that I always try to give them as a tip, because I feel like that's just so important. You got to be you. You got to be you if you're going to be happy in this field. And we need teachers who, are in it for the long haul and who are happy to be there and who feel professionally fulfilled. And I think if you're being yourself and you're setting your classroom up in ways so that you are allowed to be yourself, and if you're a quiet demeanor like me, you can be successful in your classroom. If you're someone who is more boisterous and stuff, I mean, you can still do it too, obviously. You already have your teacher voice. All right, so guys, thanks for tuning in. If you have any tips or anything that you think would be good for a new teacher or a seasoned teacher in regards to classroom management, just drop it down in the comments. If you like the content you saw here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the videos. It kind of gives us an idea of which videos are liked so that we can make more of those. And again, thanks for tuning in to the Alpha Den, and look forward to you viewing more videos. All right, guys, take care.